listening to the Innovation Forge, the #1 podcast on adaptive enrollment management, exploring the data, marketing, and strategy that fuels higher education. Here's your host, David Dysart.
Welcome back one last time to the Conference Insights Engine from the Innovation Forge. This is episode 9, the work after the summit. There's a particular feeling that comes after a good conference. You get home with notes, session decks, screenshots, half-finished ideas, hallway conversations, and a few lines in your notebook that felt obvious the moment someone said them. Then the calendar comes back. The inbox comes back. The same projects are still waiting. The same decisions still need to be made. This is where the real conference work begins. The first 8 episodes in the series traced patterns across Slate Summit sessions. We looked at decision infrastructure, query skills, signal design, communications governance, events and portals, hidden objects, teachable builds, and the next practitioner stack. This episode has a different job. It's about what teams do with all of that once the Slate Summit is over. Because a conference insight is only useful if it changes practice. The easiest thing to bring home from a conference is inspiration. The hardest thing is translation. Translation means taking something you heard in a session and turning it into a decision, a process, an owner, a build, a training artifact, or a review habit. That's the work after the summit. And it matters because Slate teams are carrying more than configuration requests now. They are designing how offices think, how data moves, how messages adapt, how events become signals, how staff learn systems, and how institutional knowledge survives turnover. That work needs tools, but it also needs judgment. Episode 1 started with decision infrastructure. The point was simple. Reports, dashboards, queries, and workflows should help people make better decisions. A dashboard that looks impressive and changes nothing is decoration. A small report that clarifies who acts next can be infrastructure. That framing matters after a conference because it gives teams a filter. When you come home with 20 ideas, you don't need to ask which idea sounds smartest. Ask which one improves the decision that already matters. Episode 2 moved into the query ladder. Queries are often treated like technical output, something someone asks for and someone else produces. The stronger view is that query skills develops in stages. A team learns to move from a question to a base population, from a base population to a row grain, from row grain to joins, from joins to reusable logic, from reusable logic to governance. The lesson after a summit is that query growth, it should be intentional. A team can choose to teach it. A team can name the next rung. A team can stop treating query expertise as magic held by one person. Episode 3 focused on signals in action. Slate produces signal everywhere. Clicks, visits, form submissions, portal activity, event attendance, checklist movement, counselor interactions, academic interests, aid engagement, reader outcomes. Signal by itself is raw material. It becomes useful when it's tied to an action. Who sees it? When do they see it? What should they do? What should they avoid doing? How will anyone know whether it worked? After the summit, a good signal idea should never stay as a signal idea for long. It should be attached to an owner and a next move. Episode 4 took the same logic into governed personalization. Personalization sounds attractive because it promises relevance. It also creates risk when every campaign becomes a maze of exceptions, conditional logic, copied messages, and mystery rules. Governed personalization asks teams to build reusable blocks, clear audience rules, suppression logic, review habits, and ownership structure. After the summit, the question is not whether a team can make messages more personal. Many teams can. The stronger question is whether the system can remain understandable after the clever build is done. Episode 5 treated events and portals as signal systems. Events are not only calendar items. Portals are not only web pages. Both are structured ways for students and families to show intent, confusion, readiness, concern, or momentum. A student who attends an admitted student day, returns to the portal, checks aid, opens housing information, and signs up for a department event is telling a story. The work here is to notice the story without overstating it. After the summit, teams should look at their event and portal data as part of the same student behavior system. Episode 6 explored the hidden operating system. Every Slate instance has visible objects and invisible logic. Forms, portals, emails, events, prompts, reader screens, and reports. These things are all visible. Rules, permissions, lookup tables, source formats, naming patterns, query conventions, inactive automations, and old decisions often sit beneath the surface. This hidden system shapes what staff can do, what data means, and how future work behaves. After the summit, some of the best work may start with the unglamorous layer. Clean up an old rule, document a source, name an owner, retire a confusing object. That is real progress. Episode 7 argued that the build is not done until it can be taught. A working Slate build is good. A working build that another person can understand, test, maintain, and explain is better. Teaching exposes the weak assumptions. It turns private knowledge into shared practice. It protects the office from dependency on one builder. After the summit, this may be the most practical habit a team can adopt. Any meaningful build should produce a small teaching artifact. A source map, a logic note, a test case, a staff guide, or a short recorded walkthrough. Episode 8 named the next Slate practitioner stack. The next generation of Slate work requires more than technical skill. It needs data literacy, process design, communications judgment, governance instincts, documentation habits, training ability, and enough AI fluency to use new tools without surrendering review. After the summit, staff development should be treated as part of a system development. If the system is getting more advanced and the people are left to catch up informally, the gap will show up later as confusion, rework, and avoidable risk. Taken together, the first 8 episodes point toward one practical conclusion. Slate ideas become valuable when they are turned into operating practice. So, what should a team actually do? Start with one decision. I know, that sounds too small, but that's exactly why it works. Pick a decision your office makes repeatedly. It could be who gets counselor follow-up this week. It could be which admitted student needs a different message. It could be which event audience should receive a second invitation. It could be which portal behavior should trigger outreach. It could be which reports are reviewed in a weekly meeting. Write the decision in plain language. Then ask what evidence currently supports it. Ask where that evidence lives. Ask who owns the action. Ask what timing matters. Ask what would change if the evidence were clearer. This turns a broad conference idea into a real operating question. Then pick one process. Most Slate pain is process pain, wearing a technical costume. Form is confusing because the process around it is unclear. A report is ignored because the meeting just does not use it. A communication rule fails because no one owns the audience definition. A portal page goes stale because maintenance was never assigned. A query becomes risky because its assumptions were never documented. After the summit, choose one process that matters and map it from beginning to end. Keep the map simple. What starts it, what data enters, what rules act on it, what staff touch it, what student experience does it create, what report or review confirms that it worked. This is where many teams find the real project hiding underneath the requested project. Then pick one signal. Choose a behavior that your office already captures and decide what it should mean. Event attendance is a signal. No-show behavior is a signal. Portal login frequency is a signal. Aid page views are a signal. Inquiry source is a signal. Program interest changes are a signal. Reader movement is a signal. Email clicks can be a signal, though they should be treated carefully. The work is to define the signal with restraint. What does it mean? What does it suggest? What does it fail to prove? Where does it fit in the student journey? What action should it inform? A good signal does not need to explain the whole student. It needs to make one next step smarter. Then pick one campaign. Communications are where many conference ideas become visible. They are also where complexity grows fast. So choose one campaign and make it cleaner. Define the audience, define the purpose, identify the reusable blocks, name the suppressions, decide what gets tested, assign an owner, decide when it will be reviewed. This is also where governed personalization becomes practical. A team does not need to rebuild its full communication strategy at once. It can take one campaign and make it a model. If the model works, the pattern can spread. Then pick one hidden object. Every office has them. The role nobody wants to touch, the look of value no one remembers getting created, the old event template still being copied, the source code that appears in reports and confuses new staff, the dataset with an unclear purpose, the permission group that has grown too broad, the query that runs every week and has no visible owner. Choose one, give it a name, an owner, a note, a test, or a retirement plan. This kind of work rarely gets applause, but it does save future time. It also reduces future confusion. It makes the instance easier to trust. Then pick one training artifact. This is where the work becomes shared. A training artifact does not need to be polished like a vendor manual. It needs to be useful. A one-page explanation of a campaign rule can be useful. A 10-minute walkthrough of how a query was built can be useful. A screenshot with labels can be useful. A checklist for testing a portal update can be useful. A source map can be useful. The goal is to turn one person's understanding into team memory. Then, pick one practitioner skill. This is the part teams often skip. They build the thing and then move on. The summit should change that habit. Every project is also a chance to grow a person or even a team. If the project involves queries, teach row grain. If it involves events, teach signal definition. If it involves communications, teach suppressions and reusable logic. If it involves portals, teach ownership and review. If it involves AI, teach prompt framing, source checking, and human review. Staff development should sit inside the project, not after it. This gives us a simple adoption model for the work after Summit. One decision, one process, one signal, one campaign, one hidden object, and one training artifact, followed by one practitioner skill. That model is small enough to use. It's also broad enough to touch the real system. A team could use it for a 30-day Summit follow-up. In the first week, gather notes and choose the decision. In the second week, map the process and define the signal. In the third week, improve the campaign or object. In the fourth week, create the training artifact and teach it back. At the end, decide what should become a standard practice. That's a better use of conference energy than opening a giant idea backlog and hoping it becomes strategy. The summit also revealed something larger about the field. Slate teams are moving toward a more mature operating model. The center of gravity is shifting from isolated builds to connected systems. That does not mean every office is at the same stage. It means the shared conversation is changing. More teams are talking about governance. More teams are asking how to make work reusable. More teams are connecting events, portals, communications, and reporting. More teams are trying to protect staff time. More teams are asking how AI fits into existing review structures. More teams are treating trading as part of implementation. More teams are realizing that technical systems carry the organizational choices. And that is such a healthy direction. It also creates a new responsibility for people who build inside of Slate. The builder is often the person who sees across the system. They see how a form affects a rule, how a rule affects a campaign, how a campaign affects a report, how a report affects a meeting, and how our meeting affects a decision. That view is so powerful, and it should be used with care. The next Slate practitioner is part builder, part analyst, part translator, part teacher, and part steward. That can sound like a lot because it is, in fact, a lot. The answer is not to expect every person to master every skill immediately. The answer is to name the work honestly and build shared capacity around it. This is also why documentation deserves more respect. Documentation is not clerical cleanup after the work. It's part of the build. It is how the build becomes transferable. It's how a future staff member knows why something exists. It's how a team notices when an old assumption no longer applies. A good document answers plain questions. What is this object? What does it do? Who owns it? What depends on it? What should be tested before changing it? And what decision does it support? When should it be reviewed? Those questions can save hours. They can also prevent bad decisions. And the same is true for testing. Testing is often treated as a final step, something to squeeze in before launch. Strong teams build testing into the work. They test the audience, they test the role, they test the message, they test the portal path, they test the report grain. They test the staff workflow. They test what happens when data is missing. Testing is not a lack of trust in the builder. It's respect for the people who will live with the build. The summit gives teams many examples of what's possible. The work after the summit asks what's appropriate, sustainable, and teachable in your own context. And that distinction matters. A session can show a brilliant build. Your office may need a smaller version. A session can reveal an elegant automation. Your office may need the governance layer first. A session can show a new way to use AI. Your office may need a clearer review policy before adding another tool. A session can offer a strong reporting model. Your office may need to settle audience definitions before the report becomes trustworthy. The mature move is to adapt with intention. This is where other sessions that did not receive full episode treatment still matter. A summit is larger than any one synthesis. Some sessions may offer one useful object, one naming pattern, one staff exercise, one governance question, one query move, one portal idea, or just one reporting habit. They may not need a full chapter to be useful. They deserve to be kept as signals for future work. That is one of the best uses of a field guide. It does not need to flatten every session into the same amount of commentary. It can help readers find patterns, choose paths, and return the source material when a specific need appears. In other words, the collection should have an index for action. If you're working on communications, go back to the chapters on governed personalization and signals. If you're working on events, return to the event and portal system frame. If you are building reports, use decision infrastructure and the query ladder. If you're cleaning an old instance, start with the hidden operating system. If you're onboarding staff, use the teaching chapter and the practitioner stack. If you're thinking about AI, read through it with the lens of governance, source checking, and review. That's how the summit keeps working after the conference ends. For leaders, the message is direct. Give conference learning an operating path. Do not ask staff to return inspired and then absorb all translation work privately. Create a short debrief. Ask what decisions need improvement. Choose a small number of ideas. Assign owners. Set review dates. Protect time for documentation and teaching. Make the conference part of the office learning system. For Slate captains and senior builders, the message is equally direct. Resist the urge to collect clever builds without naming the condition that makes them safe. When you bring an idea home, bring the assumptions with it. What data does it require? What governance does it assume? What staff capacity does it need? What could break? What needs to be taught? What should be measured? For newer practitioners, the message is encouraging. You do not need to understand the whole system at once. Start with one rung, learn how the population is defined, learn how a role fires, learn how a portal page is maintained, learn how an event record becomes reportable, learn how a communication audience is built, learn how to test, learn how to explain what you built. That's how expertise grows. For the broader Slate community, the message is one of the shared stewardship. The community gets stronger when people show their work, name their frameworks, share their mistakes carefully, credit each other, and translate local solutions into reusable ideas. Summit sessions are part of that exchange. So are the hallway conversations, the user groups, the blog posts, the office trainings, the shared templates, and the small acts of explanation that help someone else avoid confusion. That spirit matters because enrollment work is full of pressure. Deadlines are real, targets are real, students are real, staff capacity is real. Technology can help, though it can also hide messy assumptions behind clean screens. The best Slate work brings those assumptions into view. That's why the phrase decision infrastructure has stayed with me across the series. It gives us a way to connect technical work to institutional behavior. A query is part of decision infrastructure when it clarifies a population. A campaign is part of decision infrastructure when it guides action responsibly. Our portal is part of that decision infrastructure when it reveals student needs and supports next steps. An event record is part of the decision infrastructure when it helps the office understand engagement. A training artifact is part of the decision infrastructure when it helps staff use the system well. The system is not only what it is configured. The system is what people can understand, trust, use, and improve. That's the standard of the work after the summit should aim for. So, imagine the first staff meeting after the conference. Instead of walking in with a long recap, walk in with a small set of choices. Here's one decision we can improve. Here's one process behind that decision. Here's one signal we can define more clearly, one campaign or workflow we can clean up, one hidden object we should document or retire, one thing we can teach this team, and here's one skill we want to build this month. That meeting would create motion. It would also keep the summit from becoming a pile of unused notes. And this does not need to be limited to people who attended. In many offices, only a few staff members get to go. The work after the summit should widen access. It should create a good internal recap. And that should help the whole team benefit from the sessions. That does not mean recreating every single presentation. It means translating the useful patterns into the office's own language. A counselor should be able to understand what changed in outreach. An operations staff should be able to understand what changed in process. A leader should be able to understand what decision is now better supported. A new staff member should be able to understand how to learn the system. A builder should be able to understand what needs care before the next change. And that's when a conference learning becomes office learning. There's also a rhythm to this work. Some insights are immediate. They can become a checklist, a query adjustment, a naming cleanup, a training topic, or a meeting prompt. Some insights need a project plan. They touch multiple teams, data structures, communications, portals, or even reporting. Some insights should simply be watched. They are promising, though the timing or the local readiness may be wrong. Treating every idea the same is how teams get overwhelmed. Sorting ideas by use is how teams keep momentum. A simple sorting frame works well. Use now, plan next, study later. Share with someone else. That's enough. The work after the summit is also a chance to improve how teams talk about Slate. Language shapes what people can see. If everything is called a report, people miss the decision. If everything is called a campaign, people miss the governance. If everything is called engagement, people miss the difference between curiosity, intent, confusion, and action. If everything is called automation, people miss the human review structure around it. Better language creates better work. That's why titles like the query ladder, signal system, hidden operating system, and practitioner stack are useful. They give teams handles. They make invisible work easier to discuss. A staff member can say, I think this is a row grain issue. Another can say, we have a signal, though we have not defined the action. Another can say, this build works, and now we need to teach it. This is the kind of language that reduces friction. It also helps leaders value the right work. The most important project in a month may not be the flashiest one. It may be cleaning the logic that supports tens of other processes. It may be documenting how an audience is built. It may be training staff to understand a report. It may be creating a review habit before personalization grows. It may even be naming what a signal does and does not mean. Those are the kinds of moves that make future work easier. AI belongs in this conversation too. Summit conversations around AI will keep growing because the tools are getting more capable and the pressure to use them will increase. The work after Summit is to place AI inside of good practice. AI can help summarize, draft, classify, compare, brainstorm, and explain. It still needs context. It still needs review. It still needs source awareness. And it still needs boundaries. A weak process with AI added is still a weak process. A clear process with AI placed carefully inside it can become faster, easier to teach, and easier to scale. This is the line teams need to hold. The same is true for analytics. Better models, richer signals, smarter dashboards. These can all help enrollment teams see patterns earlier. They can also create false confidence if the office forgets what the data can and cannot say. A student is more than a score. A signal is more than a verdict. A model is more than a magic answer. Good analytics should improve judgment. It should not replace judgment. This is why the work after the summit is partly technical and partly ethical. Teams are making choices about how students are understood, grouped, messaged, supported, and measured. These choices should be visible enough to review. Slate gives offices a lot of power, and the summit shows how creative the community can be with that power. The next step is discipline. Discipline in naming, in testing, in ownership, in documentation, in teaching, and review. That discipline does not make the work less creative. It gives creative work somewhere stable to land. As this is the first conference Insight Engine series closes, the point is not that these 8 or 9 chapters have finished the conversation. They should start better conversations inside offices. The value is in what gets built next, what gets clarified next, what gets taught next, and what gets retired because it no longer serves the work. A good summit sends people home with ideas. A great office turns a few of those ideas into habits. So, take the notes, revisit the sessions, credit the presenters, share the examples, then choose something real. Choose one decision that needs better support. Choose one process that needs to be mapped. Choose one signal that needs a definition. Choose one campaign that needs governance. Choose one hidden object that needs care. Choose one build that needs to be taught. Choose one skill your team should grow. That's the work after Summit. And that's where the Conference Insight Engine leaves us, with a simple belief that the best Slate work is built, governed, taught, reviewed, and improved in community. This has been the Conference Insight Engine from the Innovation Forge. Thanks for listening. And remember to strike true. If you enjoyed today's episode, please grow the guild by rating and reviewing the Innovation Forge podcast or sharing it with a colleague who needs to hear about these creative crossovers in education. The best review or comment every month will get an ebook of my book, of course. Particularly great ones will also be featured on future episodes. Thank you so much for joining me in the workshop today. Remember to strike true, and let's forge something extraordinary together.
Kill the noise, find the signal in the voice. All the sessions after dark. We came home with a suitcase full of slides, names and notes and half-drawn lines. Every room had a better way to see what the system wants to be. There were dashboards, portals, roles, training plans and cleaner tools. Every story left a mark. Now the real work has to start, because a good idea can fade by Friday if nobody gives it a place. So write the owner, name the next step, put the proof where the team can trace. The work after the summit is the work that makes it stay. Turn the spark into a system, turn the session into clay. Build the map, write the reason, give the question somewhere to run. The work after the summit is where the conference becomes one. First we sort what we heard into lanes. What is quick and what needs change? What can teach? What can move? What is theory? What can prove? One idea becomes a guide. One becomes a portal side. One becomes a training day. One becomes a cleaner way. Because notes are only useful when they change the Monday flow. So give them rhythm, give them review, give the next person what you know. The work after the summit is the work that makes it stay. Turn the spark into a system, turn the session into clay. Build the map, write the reason, give the question somewhere to run. The work after the summit is where the conference becomes one. No more folder full of maybe, no more good idea in sleep. Put the owner in the margin, put the test where we can see. Make the ladder, make the ledger, make the lesson someone keeps. If the build cannot be taught yet, then the build is incomplete. Slow it down, dig a grave. Who decides what remains, where it lives? Who reviews what we measure, what we use? The work after the summit is the work that makes it stay. Turn the spark into a system, turn the session into clay. Build the map, write the reason, give the question somewhere to run. The work after the summit is where the conference becomes one. The work after the summit is the practice and the proof. It is source maps on the table, it is training in the room. From the notes to the roadmap, from the roadmap to the done. The work after the summit is where the conference becomes one. Count the pages, kill the noise, find the signal and the voice. All the sessions, all the sparks. Now we build it after dark.